Hi, Teri here from Stamping Magic. Thank you for clicking on my video. Today's project is a 6-inch square card. I've used the Borders Abound stamp set together with the Peony Dies. So let's get started. These are all the measurements you need for all the elements required to create this project. So if you're interested in reproducing it, take a screenshot so you can refer to it later. I'm going to make my own card base from 2 pieces of cardstock, and I'm using basic black today. If you have some 12 by 12 black card, you can just cut that in half and use it. I have one piece measuring 6 inches square and the other piece is 6.5 inches by 6 inches. I'll place this into my Simply scoreboard with the longer side across the top and score down at 6 inches. I'm going to slant cut each end of the 1/2 inch tab that I created. Then I can fold on the score line and burnish with my bone folder. I'll join both pieces together by adding glue onto the 1/2 inch tab and placing the other half onto it. Now the 1/2 inch tab on the inside of the card will be covered by the inner panel once the card is complete. The Designer Series paper I'm using on this project is from the latest in colour 6-inch paper stack, and it's in Magenta Madness. I'll be cutting out a piece from the centre of this sheet to create the second mat that I need for my project. On the larger piece, I'm going to make sure I keep a frame of 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres all the way round. So I'm lining up the right side of this sheet at 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres, and then I'm lining up the cutting blade at 1 inch on the vertical ruler. And I'll cut down to 1 inch above the bottom edge, which is 4 7/8 of an inch. Then I can turn my mat and repeat. Now my blade is already positioned at the bottom, so I'll start there and cut up to 1 inch down from the top edge. Then I can rotate again and repeat for the remaining 2 sides. Each time I turn the mat, I'm making sure I line up that right hand edge at 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres. The piece I'm removing from the centre will actually be larger than I need, so it will need to be cut down to size. And here I'm cutting it down to the size I need, and I'm cutting off a little from each edge as I go to ensure that the polka dot pattern on the paper stays more or less centered. This is the Borders Abound stamp set, and I'm just using this one image today. I'm using my Stamparatus for the stamping on this project, and I'm stamping on a panel of normal weight Whisper White card. Now there are a couple of different ways to create this floral frame. One of them is to mark the position of a corner of the Whisper White mat. Now once you've done that, you place your mat and then you can position your stamp. Now when I position this stamp, I'm going to position it right on the top edge of the mat. And I'm going to make sure it's centered across the width of the mat. Then I can pick up the stamp. Now I am going to check the position of the stamp to make sure it's exactly where I want it. So I'm going to add a sheet of acetate over the top of my cardstock. Then I'll ink up my stamp and stamp it down onto the acetate. And I'll be able to see through it to the cardstock to make sure that it looks straight and it's centered as I want it. Once I've done that, I can remove the acetate and stamp properly onto the Whisper White panel. Once I've stamped the image the first time, I can rotate the cardstock, aligning the next corner up with that mark, and then stamp the second side, and then repeat this until all 4 sides are done. The second method of creating this floral frame is to use a wreath building template. I created my own template, and I'll leave a link at the top right of the screen under the eye to another video that shows you how I did this. My white panel is 5 inches, so I'm using my 5-inch wreath template, and I've positioned this into the top right corner of the Stamparatus. I'm going to use my sheet of acetate again to protect my white panel while I position the stamp. It might still have a little ink on it. So I'm positioning it in exactly the same way as I did previously, and I'm going to do another dummy run to make sure it's exactly where I want it to be. And I'm stamping using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I'm happy with the position of the stamp, so I can now remove the acetate, make sure my template is still in that top right corner, and then I can ink up my stamp again and stamp it down onto the white panel. I can now rotate my cardstock within the template so the next edge is positioned, ink up my stamp and stamp it down again. And that's 2 sides complete. I can then repeat this for the remaining 2 sides, and that will give me my floral frame. I also need to stamp the bottom of the inside mat, so I'm going to do that here. I'm trying to position my mat so I don't have to move the stamp. And once I'm happy, I'm going to do a dummy run. I always check the position, so I've added my sheet of acetate and done a test stamp. If I'm happy with it, I can carefully remove the acetate and stamp my image. I'm just going to show you how to colour one of these images. All the others will be coloured in exactly the same way. These are the Peony Dies, and I've divided mine onto 2 magnetic sheets. The first sheet holds all the outline dies that coordinate with the stamp set, and the second sheet holds all the dies that I've used today to create my large flower. I've used the 4 main dies to die cut from Whisper White card, then I've used Mango Melody card for the stamens. The 3 leaves are cut from Just Jade, and then the accents for the leaves are cut from Shaded Spruce. First of all, I'm going to add the relevant accent piece onto each of the 3 leaves. I'm going to add additional colour to all of the die cuts, and starting with the stamens, I'm using my sponge dauber to add Mango Melody ink. Then for the 4 flower pieces, I'm going to add some Magenta Madness. Each of these 4 pieces has a little cut section in the middle of it, and you want to make sure that you also add colour to the top of that cut. I'm using shaded spruce around each of the leaves. In the past, I've kept the flower sections flat, but this time I'm going to add some extra dimensionals within each section to add some more dimension to the flower. I've removed the backings for the dimensionals on the small piece, and on the next size up I've removed the 4 lower ones. Now normally I insert these sections from the bottom, but because of the dimensionals it's a bit harder to do, so I'm going in from the top this time, and you just want to position them so the bottom edges align perfectly. Then I can give it a little press to anchor the dimensionals, and then just add a little wet glue along that bottom edge to keep it secure. Then I can remove the backings to the remaining dimensionals. I'm now going to remove the backings to the lower dimensionals on the next size up, and then I can position this one. So again, I'm going in from the top, trying not to let them stick before I'm ready, and you just again need to align that bottom, give it a little press, and then I can also add some wet glue. I can then remove all the remaining dimensionals backings and position my last section. Again, that bottom edge will line up perfectly, so you need to position it and then give it a little press, and then add some wet glue, which is completely optional. It will hold just with the dimensionals. I can then add this little stamen piece into the centre of the flower. And now I can start putting the card together. So I have my card base, I have the frame of designer series paper that I cut earlier, I have my stamped panel for the inside of the card and my stamp panel for the front of the card. I'll layer that onto a piece of basic black. Then I have my other piece of designer series paper, and I'm going to also layer this onto a basic black mat. The black circle was die cut using one of the Stitched Shapes circle dies, the largest one, and then I've added dimensionals onto the back of my flower. And that's it. My card is now complete. Now you may want to create a box for this one rather than use an envelope, and I'll put a link at the top right of the screen to another video showing you how to create one. And then here's my original card. Now the colour I used here was So Saffron. The paper is retired and it was from our subtle stack of a year or two ago. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.